State Senator Rosemary Bayer from the 12th District. Joining us now on the MegaCast. District 12 includes many communities such as Addison Township, Auburn Hills, Beverly Hills, Keego Harbor, Oakland Township, the village of Lake Orion, Pontiac, as well as Southfield, and so on. There's many different communities in Rosemary Bayer's district, and she joins us now on the MegaCast. Senator Bayer, thank you for being with us again.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
I appreciate having you on. How have you been? How's your team?
There's a lot of communities in the district. And,
there is. I got at least a paragraph of them right here in front of me on
the whole
page.
Paragraph. They're all important, but I actually had the opportunity to live up in the very northern part, right on the border of the county, and now I live down in the very southern part in Beverly Hills.
So you got to see. You got to see your coverage area from both sides. That's fantastic. So last time we featured you on, the state was going through a lot of changes. Still was in the process of discussing, particularly the education funding that may be severely cut. It was a lot worse of a projection at that time than what we saw from the Consensus Revenue Estimating Conference. But still, as of now, $600 to $650 cut per pupil is still potentially in play for these schools. How have things progressed on the legislative level, at the government level in the state of Michigan, to help these schools continue to work to possibly shoulder the blow, if they can, from these cuts?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different things that are going on. One, the biggest one, I would say, from my time perspective, is trying to find more money, right? So the one thing that is across the board, all different parts of this process that we go through, everybody wants to protect the school funding as much as, get as much of it back as possible before the school year starts. And there's a frustration because we haven't been able to actually issue numbers in a real way yet, because we're trying to fill the gap. We're trying to find ways to get through this. That includes advocating with our congressional representatives, our senators, our congresspeople. My big, huge, long district includes 4 congresspeople. So all of them are working on this to try to find ways to get more money into the system so that we can put more money into the schools and not have a deficit for this year. And it's a challenge because some of the first deficit is the current school year, which is nearly done, of course, and pretty hard to cut out of your budget money that's already been spent. So that's a specific challenge, and that's $1 billion, and it's a lot of money to ask to find when you've already spent your budget or most of your budget. So we're working on that pretty frantically from a financial perspective as well with our treasury, trying to find ways to make this up without having to impact the school districts directly. And then going forward, of course, we're still looking at next year, another $1 billion, and the year for that less than that. It doesn't go down as we go forward, but we're really trying to maneuver, right? So using funds from other things to pull the budget as full as we can from a Michigan perspective. And I don't know if you were going to ask if you're interested in the federal CARES money that we have been allocated. It's over $3 billion. We can't really use that to pay our school bills. We can only use that for COVID expenses. So one of the things as I've been working with our school districts is talking to them about identifying the specifics of what they need because of COVID, right? So there are a lot of things that have to get added this year. Whatever the model is going to look like in each of our school districts. If they need to have screeners at the door, if they need extra transportation, if they need extra teachers because kids are working at home and at school, right? A blended kind of in-home, at-home, or in-school, at-home model. All of those things require extra resources that are specific to this virus. And so those are things that we can pull that CARES money for as we identify the models and understand what they need. We can use that money. The standard budget that we were expecting to have this year, that we can't use the CARES money for. So we're advocating with our federal government to let us use some of that to pay those bills, because the only reason we can't pay them is because of COVID-19. We were in a perfectly fine shape before that. It was all directly related to the virus. So all those pieces are being worked right now, which is kind of slowing down the budgeting process. We should have by now had a better feel for everybody what their money was going to look like. but it's because we don't want to give up the fight here. We want to find more money and do the best we can for the schools. We're getting the health thing managed. We're starting to get pretty good at that. Getting through this, that's why we're loosening, why the governors are loosening some of the restrictions. So now our next top priority is the schools.
Yeah, schools have to be a priority. They're planning now to take a potentially large hit, and they don't know what that's going to be. There's going to be another estimating conference coming up very soon that will also help to determine that, and the state's working very hard, it seems, especially the governor's mentioned it's been a priority of hers to do whatever she can to move money around and to help, and hopefully get some federal aid from your conversation with our people in Congress in Washington. Is that looking positive? Do you believe that we may have a chance of getting some federal aid in for Michigan schools, or are other states potentially working on that?
It sort of kind of goes in and out. Some days it feels like, yes, we're going to get there, and then other days it takes a few steps back and, kind of revamp. I heard again today that it was looking more positive, but, we're just going to keep pushing in every direction because we can't count on anything there until we have it, basically. So anything we can do locally, anything we can do with our treasury, any other mechanism that we have to keep the schools whole, that's what we're trying to do, all of them together. It's just, doing our job, doing everything we can.
Yeah, still
take care of the schools and the kids.
Yeah, still definitely a lot of question marks in regards to school funding.
Unfortunately, yeah, we just don't have the answers yet. I wish we did. We don't want to say $650, right? We don't want that. So that's why we're fighting. That's why we're working.
Yeah, I mean, if you can reduce the amount of the size of the hit per pupil that's going to go to these school districts from these budget cuts that frankly are going to need to happen across the board, not just in education, but in other services as well. But making that as minimal as possible is going to be the best benefit for the student, and that's the purpose of our education system in the state of Michigan.
So the one thing I will mention, most of the school funding in Michigan comes from sales taxes. And so as our businesses come back, as our restaurants are open, and I don't encourage people to get takeouts, as you feel more comfortable with your personal household revenue stream, right, your income, share that, start going out and getting, even if you're not comfortable sitting in a restaurant, buy some more takeout food, and the things that we can do to prop up our own Michigan businesses, that's going to be better for our budgets, for the school budgets, and that's where that money goes. Just to remind folks, when we look at the projections for income levels for individuals and families in Michigan, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty consistent. It doesn't take the big dive that businesses have. So we have to build our confidence, and we have to feel safe and all of those things. We don't want to rush anything. We're being very careful about how we come back. But as we do that, think local business, think Michigan business.
Yeah, and these businesses are coming back. Restaurants are reopening, and we're seeing other businesses that have had their restrictions under the COVID-19 safety measures being taken by the governor and by the state government as well be lifted gradually over time. Is that giving some sense of hope to this budget issue that sales tax could come back in some sort of a boom? Maybe it's not much, but it's something that at least gives a positive outlook. Is that giving any sort of positive forward movement to to solving some of these budget issues?
Well, the projections do assume that people start going out more. I mean, there is an assumption there, but it's an assumption. And given that we've never had this happen before, right? This is completely new, unprecedented. So the assumptions that the financial analysts make are based on, informed decisions. These are experts in the field, but they don't really know how people are going to behave. So when we look at income levels that really aren't going down that much when you factor in everything, once you then look at the consumer confidence index, which is just 10, right? So those two things together are a challenge for people going out and spending money. You have to feel confident that your income stream is back, your job is back, or whatever it is that you're dependent on is okay, and then you can start spending again. And that's the piece that we're still sort of tiptoeing and trying to find our way. But now that we're opening, pretty quickly here, we'll start to get a feel for how do people feel about this. How are we doing? To me, I see more people out and about. I see more cars on the road. It seems like everybody's excited about that.
Yeah, definitely seems like people are really eager to get back out, and hopefully that does provide some sort of economic boom that can help with these budget issues. So Senator Rosemary Bayer with us on the MegaCast from Michigan's 12th District. We just have a few more minutes with you, Senator, so I'd like to move on, if possible, to talk about what's also going on beyond the coronavirus in our communities throughout the state and throughout the country as we start to see our communities speak out against injustices, including police brutality, particularly through the Black Lives Matter protests that have popped up throughout the country, including right here in Michigan. Governor Whitmer marched with faith leaders and protesters down Woodward Avenue yesterday. We have our team out in West Bloomfield where they're going to have where there's going to be a protest and a march today. And on that note, on the issue at hand that sparked all this, which was police brutality and the issues that surround that, the Michigan Senate recently passed a bill that requires implicit bias and de-escalation police training and protests. Could you go into a little bit about what's in that bill and what changes are being made to regulations on our law enforcement?
Yeah, so, what's interesting, we're one of the few states that doesn't really have continuing education requirements for police forces. So that's a big part of what came out yesterday in that bill. And specifically, as you said, implicit bias, cultural awareness training, de-escalation is a critical piece of that, using alternate methods before force. I mean, all of the things that are more modern policing that you wouldn't necessarily, it's not that they don't talk about it, and some police forces are more informed than others, or younger, or, it just depends on your population. This is a way to make sure that all across the state, all of our police forces will have that same level of current training, modern ways of dealing with these kind of situations. So we can move away from some of the violence that happens and go toward peaceful protesting, which is what people want. I mean, these are people who are saying the truth, right? They're telling their story. They're making sure their voices are heard and trying to do that in a peaceful way. And so we must deal with that correctly. We must allow that to happen. That's a big part of how our government works, how a democracy works, and how healthy we are. We make that happen, and we allow that to be safe and people to feel safe when they go out to speak their minds. And it's such a hugely important issue to be able to see how we're moving forward just in a short period of time in awareness and helping people understand, what does this really mean to have skin of a darker color? How does that really feel when you get pulled over by the police? When I get pulled over by the police, I'm not actually fearful for myself at all, right?
Yeah, neither.
But I have many friends who have dark skin who, when they get pulled over, it is terrifying. Their heart races. They want to make sure they never do the wrong thing because anything can happen, and they're raised to know that anything can happen. And so this fearfulness and the stress level because of that actually causes people to live shorter lives. There's something called early death syndrome, and it's to do with being afraid and being under stress your whole life. We don't even realize that happens, most of us. So this is a really important movement for everyone in this country to understand what's really happening and look at our opportunities to start to move forward out of this.
Absolutely. It's time for us to face the uncomfortable issue and have those uncomfortable conversations. And I think that's what's happening with the Michigan Senate passing this bill really quickly as these protests have gone on and the issue's been raised and brought to the forefront. And on top of that, we've had a lot of police officers on this week from the West Bloomfield Police Department, from Bloomfield Hills, from Rochester, all throughout our local area. And they've all really been in agreement with the movement that this is not what policing is about. It's not about enforcing the law with the emphasis on enforcement being on force. It's about keeping order in a way that organizes communities and keeps communities vigilant and keeps communities safe. So they're having this conversation and saying, that's not us. We want to be engaging in the correct training amongst our ranks and make it clear what our purpose really is. And it's good that we're having that conversation. Are you seeing that happen more across the board with the law enforcement?
Yeah. So when I went to the rally in Pontiac, and when I came in, I saw the community police folks, their sheriff's department actually there that serve Pontiac, and everybody knows them. And I walked over and this Gil, hey Gil, how you doing? And he comes, big virtual hugging going on there, and so I asked him what was happening and how they were reacting to everything. He said, they called and asked us, if they're the community members, what do we want? What do we think they need to do? And he said, we just want to go out and be there. We're going to be part of the community like we always are. And there they were. They're part of the gang, and everybody knows them, and everything's good. They know they're there for the right reasons, and they're bringing that calmness and that peace to the gathering, which was marvelous, actually. So it's decidedly what they want to do. This is about knowing how to do the right thing and getting them there. I think it's more than possible, right? You can definitely get there.
I agree as well. Rosemary Bayer, the state senator from Michigan's 12th district, with us on the MegaCast. Just a couple more minutes we have left with you. So before I let you go, anything else that you'd like to say before I let you go that we haven't maybe touched on already?
No, the only thing I would mention is in support again of our businesses, because they are supposed to have people wear masks, right? And they have to do a lot of things to keep their business safe. So true, no shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service. And this should not be a big deal for people. Get over your whatever stubbornness you feel about this. The same reason you have to wear shoes in that store is the same reason you have to wear masks in that store. Just put the thing on, get over it. It's not a big deal. We all are doing it. Japan's been doing it for years, right? This is just normal. And make it easier on the restaurant people who don't want to turn away business because they desperately need you to come. So just follow the rules. Don't make them have to decide what to do with you. Go along. I've seen people on Facebook saying, thanks for telling me they're not wearing masks there. I'm not going there. So I think this is the right, we all know from a medical perspective, it's the right thing to do. But it's also the right thing to do to support our local businesses. Wear your mask.
Yeah, it's a great way to support local businesses and a great way to support the people in your community and all throughout our state as we continue on through this. Senator Rosemary Bayer from Michigan's 12th District, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Rosemary Bayer from Michigan's 12th District, our state senator, with us